A darkness that seemed to swallow the light surrounded us as we stepped into the forest. The night was thick, almost palpable, as we trudged through the undergrowth, our boots sinking into the damp soil with each step. The moon, shrouded by a blanket of ominous clouds, barely illuminated the gnarled branches above. The eerie glow seemed to cast a spectral pallor over the forest, enhancing the sense of foreboding that clung to the air. I, Sergeant Turner, led my intrepid squad deeper into the heart of the woods. The forest was alive with uncanny sounds, strange rustlings, distant whispers, the occasional snap of a twig under an unseen weight. It was as if the forest itself was breathing, watching, waiting. Despite my years of military experience, a knot of unease tightened in my gut. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that unseen eyes were studying our every move. The chilling wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a sense of dread. I ordered my men to stay alert, their eyes darting nervously from shadow to shadow. The darkness seemed to morph into tangible shapes, taking on a sinister life of its own. The forest was no longer just a collection of trees and shrubs. It was a living, breathing entity with a will of its own. The deeper we ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The forest seemed to close in on us, the trees forming a grotesque canopy overhead. Every rustle of leaves, every distant hoot of an owl seemed amplified, sending chills down our spines. The air grew colder and a heavy fog began to settle, reducing visibility to almost nothing. As we moved forward, the strange sounds grew louder, more insistent. Whispers turned into guttural moans, shadows danced maliciously in our peripheral vision. The haunted tales whispered among soldiers about these woods were coming to life. The forest was alive, and it was not welcoming. Panic began to seep into my men, their eyes wide with fear. "Stay alert, men. We are not alone." The shadows parted to reveal a sight that sent a chill down my spine. An abandoned village. The decaying remnants of a civilization lost in time stood ominously in the heart of the forest. The structures, once filled with life and laughter, now lay rotting, their skeletal frames a haunting testament to a forgotten past. The village was a spectral image from a nightmare, a ghostly tableau frozen in time. Every hut and shack was a shell of its former self, their skeletal frames barely standing amidst the overgrown vegetation. The once bustling center of the village was now a barren square, its cobblestone path cracked and overrun with weeds. The eerie silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the occasional caw of a distant crow. The atmosphere was oppressive, as if the air itself carried the weight of sorrow and despair. A sense of dread filled the air and clung to us like a second skin. The village was not just abandoned, it felt forsaken, as though its inhabitants had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the ghostly echoes of their existence. As we ventured deeper into the village, our footfalls echoed through the desolate streets, the sound amplified by the stifling silence. An inexplicable chill ran down my spine as the eerie stillness was broken by the crackle of our radio. A voice, distorted and unearthly, echoed through the speakers, murmuring words that made no sense. The language was unrecognizable, the tone haunting, and the message, though indecipherable, filled us with a sense of impending doom. The men, already on edge, started to panic. Their eyes darted nervously around, their hands trembling slightly as they clutched their rifles tighter. The radio continued to crackle with the distorted voice, the frequency of the transmissions increasing, the tone growing more urgent. The fear was palpable. Each man looking to me for guidance, their faces etched with terror. The voice on the radio was like a chilling wind, whispering words we couldn't comprehend. The ghost village had revealed its sinister secret, and we were trapped in its spectral grip, teetering on the edge of sanity. As we ventured deeper, the forest seemed to distort time and space. The once familiar terrain twisted into something alien and foreboding. The air grew colder, the fog thickened, and visibility was reduced to barely a few feet. The darkness, once a mere absence of light, now felt like a tangible entity, stretching and warping around us. The trees towered over us, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands, while the forest's whispers grew louder, more insistent. There was a weight in the air, a presence that was felt more than seen. It was as though the very forest was alive, watching us, toying with us. Suddenly the silence was shattered by a scream. Private Anderson, a tough-as-nails soldier who had seen his fair share of combat, was thrashing wildly, his eyes wide with terror. An invisible force seemed to take hold of him, dragging him towards the shadows. We rushed to his aid, but it was as if he was being pulled by a current too strong to fight. His screams echoed through the forest, a chilling testament to the terror he was experiencing. Despite our efforts, the darkness swallowed him whole, leaving nothing but the echoes of his cries and the chilling silence of the forest. The forest seemed to close in around us, the trees looming larger, the shadows growing darker. We were in its grip, lost in a place where time and space seemed meaningless. The forest was no longer just a mass of trees and undergrowth. It was a living, breathing entity, its whispers growing louder, its unseen eyes watching our every move. The darkness was now a wall, impenetrable and omnipresent. The fog was a shroud, wrapping us in its cold embrace. The forest had taken one of us, and we were left with the terrifying realization that we were not alone. We were in its domain, at the mercy of whatever lurked in the shadows. We could only watch in horror as the forest swallowed Anderson whole. The echoes of his screams were a chilling reminder of the unseen horrors that lay in wait. The forest was no longer just a place. It was an entity, a malevolent force that had claimed one of us as its own. Chaos ensued, our formation broken, our minds shattered. Our once disciplined unit fractured under the weight of the unseen horror. The forest, once a silent observer, now seemed to be an active participant in our torment. It was as though the trees themselves mocked our despair, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands, clawing at our sanity. Private Anderson's scream still echoed in our ears, a chilling reminder of the malevolent force that lurked in the shadows. His terrified cries had been abruptly silenced, swallowed whole by the oppressive darkness. His disappearance sent ripples of panic through my men, their faces pale under the ghostly glow of the moon. Our reality was unraveling, the forest morphing into a labyrinth of shadows and fear, the once familiar terrain twisted and distorted, trapping us in its sinister embrace. Our compasses spun wildly, their needles dancing to an unseen tune. Time seemed to stretch and distort, minutes becoming hours, hours becoming an eternity. The radio crackled to life once more, only this time, it was not the comforting voice of command. Instead, a guttural whisper echoed through the static, a voice that seemed to come from the very bowels of the forest. The incomprehensible words filled the air, sending shivers down our spines. My men were on the verge of a breakdown, their eyes wide with terror. The once stoic soldiers were now trembling, their hands shaking as they clutched their rifles. The forest had stripped us of our armor, exposing our raw fear and vulnerability. The darkness was no longer just an absence of light, but an entity in itself. It swirled around us, its cold tendrils seeping into our minds, sowing seeds of dread. It was as if the forest was feeding on our fear, growing stronger with each passing moment. We were no longer soldiers. We were prey. The forest had transformed from a battleground into a hunting ground, and we were the ones being hunted. We were lost, not only in the physical sense, but also in the psychological. Our unity, our strength, our sanity, all had been consumed by the insatiable appetite of the forest. It had claimed one of our own, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were next. We were no longer soldiers. We were prey. In the heart of the forest, we came face to face with the true horror. The forest thickened around us, its darkness swallowing our fears and doubts, feeding off the terror that pulsed through our veins. The trees seemed to come alive, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands, their bark pulsating as if they were drawing breath. With each passing moment, it became clear that we were not alone. The forest was alive, not with the life of flora and fauna, but something far more sinister. The unseen horror was not merely in the shadows that danced around us, but in the forest itself. It was the whispering wind that carried an echo of our deepest fears, the rustling leaves that held a symphony of our desperate cries, and the very ground beneath our feet that pulsed with a grotesque rhythm, matching the frantic beat of our hearts. The forest seemed to feast on our fear, growing bolder and more relentless with each passing moment. The once familiar rustle of leaves morphed into the laughter of unseen specters. The wind carried distorted whispers of our names, and the cold seemed to seep into our bones, chilling our very souls. I, Sergeant Turner, stood amidst my men, their faces etched with terror, their eyes wide with the realization of our grim fate. I couldn't help but wonder if we were destined to join the ranks of the lost, those who had ventured into these woods and never returned. Were we to become mere whispers on the wind, cautionary tales told around campfires? The forest seemed to answer with a gust of wind that howled through the trees, carrying with it a chilling promise of our impending doom. The shadows lengthened, creeping closer as if eager to claim us. We were no longer hunters in this forest, but the hunted. As the shadows closed in, I couldn't help but wonder, had we been claimed by the forest? Dive into the abyss of the dark and mysterious, a realm teeming with gruesome goodies designed to make your stomach churn and toes curl. The Amazon affiliate link, waiting in the description, is your ticket to this world. Don't hesitate, explore the unexplored. Who knows, you might just find your new obsession. And so, our tale of the Campfire Horrors comes to an end. Until next time, sleep tight. Before we part ways, dear viewers, remember to stay vigilant. The Campfire Horrors may have been extinguished for now, but the embers of the unknown always remain. As you lay down to sleep tonight, don't forget the lessons from our tale. Safety is but a fleeting moment in a world of unseen. So, if you've enjoyed this journey into the abyss, don't forget to ring that bell and smash that like button. Do it before the thing under your bed decides to pay you a visit. Oh, and keep those night lights on. You never know what might be lurking in the dark. Thank you for embarking on this terrifying adventure with us, until our paths cross again in another tale of the unknown. Goodbye and sweet dreams, if you can.